Quick shout to Julian, who says, "Hi, James, I could tell you a joke about trickle-down economics, but you probably wouldn't get it." Just think about it for a minute, all right? So here is the idea behind trickle-down economics. Tax cuts benefit those who pay the most tax. The more tax you pay, the more you benefit from a tax cut. This is not complicated. This is not rocket science, right? So the thinking is behind it that if people who have already got the most money have even more money to spend, then that money will make its way into the pockets of the people with the least money. I think it's a pretty disgusting ideology for two reasons. Number one, it doesn't work. But number two, it sells an almighty lie. It sells a lie that policies designed to enrich the richest are somehow actually designed to help the poorest. Now, if you could prove to me that that were true, I'd have to undertake a Johnson-esque U-turn on my positioning. But, for example, stamp duty cuts that are coming, that will benefit people who can afford to buy homes. It will see more movement in a housing market that's already massively inflated and therefore will do absolutely nothing for people who are struggling to get onto the housing ladder. Spending large amounts of public money on building social housing that would then subsequently pay for itself would be a progressive policy. Helping homeowners buy more houses or do more deals seems to me to be almost incomprehensible if you are seriously trying to help a lot of people. Which leads me to the question that will underpin the first hour of this morning's programme. What is this designed to do? I mean, the reason I mentioned Johnson's absence of integrity in policy at the beginning of this introduction was simply because we are going to talk about Liz Truss differently from how we talked about Boris Johnson. It's the difference between somebody with no plan and somebody with what may prove to be a diabolical plan. Trickle-down economics seems to me to be fundamentally and fatally flawed for one very, very simple reason. The more money you've got, the less likely you are to spend it. My tax cuts, because I'm going to get very well looked after as a top-rate taxpayer. I'll be very, very well looked after by any tax cuts that Liz Truss introduces, are almost certainly going to stay in my savings account. If I was already living hand to mouth, if I was already finishing each month with a little bit less than was coming in, any money that made its way into my bank account would go straight back into the economy. This is just one simplistic and very personal, very subjective perspective on the issue. The idea that you can improve the lot of everybody by improving deliberately and specifically the lot of the best off, the lot of the wealthiest, the lot of the richest, seems to me to be actually disgusting. I'm a Catholic by birth, or not by birth, by baptism, which means I've been raised very much in the Christian tradition. And that seems to me to be completely at odds, and it's not a phrase you'll hear from me very often, but you're talking still about people who claim they're Christian when they're trying to deport people to Rwanda. This seems to me to be against Christ's teachings. The idea that you help the poorest by making sure the richest have got more. And I want you to talk to me about that. 0345 6060 973. I want you to just simply talk about whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, and whether actually those of us who strain a little too hard sometimes to see the good in everybody. I was a little bit haunted by one tweet yesterday, the one that talked about my obsession to find a good Tory. And you're right, I do believe that there are good people in almost all walks of life. I'd make exceptions for some groupings, I suppose, some political ideologies. Obviously, good Nazis are particularly thin on the ground. But those of us who do, because it's a much healthier way to live your life, strain to see the good in everybody, perhaps need to turn it down on a day like today, because trickle-down economics is as ghoulish and as greedy and as gross as it appears. It's not something that becomes less offensive the more you understand. It's not something that gives up its gifts the deeper you dig into its detail. It's something deliberately and disgustingly designed to take a topsy-turvy society and put even more corn in the sacks of the wealthy, while claiming that it will somehow trickle down from a sealed sack into the begging bowls of society's poorest people. And we have been so gaslit and so groomed in this country by ludicrous, self-defeating nonsense in our media about striver versus skiver, about private versus public, about, hard-working people. The richest people are the hardest working. Absolute cobblers. Absolute nonsense. But it has been so successfully perpetrated upon our people for so long that now it reaches its apotheosis. A government that will absolutely, unapologetically commit itself to the idea that we help fix a tanking economy by making sure the richest people in it have got even more money than they had yesterday. Go on, riddle me that. You have to be honest with me, I think. Don't you? Look, I'm a top-rate taxpayer. And I hate this policy. That makes me a champagne socialist or a virtue signaler or whatever the word is this week to describe people who benefit from unfairness and therefore abhor the unfairness. But who is this designed to appeal to? You know who it's designed to appeal to. You hear them on this radio station all the time. Designed to appeal to people who think that they've worked harder than everybody else and that's why they're landlords. Or they've worked harder than everybody else and that's why they're rich. No matter that they were often born 3-0 up, they think they've scored a hat-trick. They think the unfairness is justified. Or they think that a rich man belongs in his castle and a poor man belongs at his gate. Even the poor man will sometimes believe this because God made them high and lowly and ordered their estate. So who is this designed to appeal to? Not just to the people who will benefit from it, the people who pay a lot of tax because they earn a lot of money. It's also designed to appeal to the people, and this is the bit I've never understood. It will also appeal to the people who will never, ever get a piece of the action. The temporarily frustrated millionaires, as John Steinbeck called them. The people who will always be on the wrong side of Easy Street, but who want the people on the right side of Easy Street to get all the breaks and all the tax cuts and all the bonuses and all the benefits, because one day, I could be on the right side of unfairness. And those are the people, I think, that fascinate me the most. Someone asked me the other day, what did you talk about before Brexit and Boris Johnson? And I struggled to remember. But if you did listen to the programme back in those days, you'd have heard that Steinbeck quote 1,000 times. There was no such thing as poverty in Dust Bowl era America. Just temporarily frustrated millionaires. The people who support and sustain epic inequality, a huge unfairness, a fetishization of wealth, despite not having any. That's who Liz Truss is going after. I wonder whether at this point in our economic cycle and our national history, I wonder whether it will work this time. What do you think? What do you think about a policy that is designed to further enrich the richest members of our society, but is being sold to you as a way to help the poorest?